Hello, welcome to our daily work remote strategies. We're so glad you're here today. We have two phenomenal people with us today. We have Giselle Timmerman and Brian Branagan. I'm going to tell you one or two things about each of them, and then we're going to jump in about talking about what we could all use as support and creating that support network. All right, so here goes. We have Giselle Timmerman right here in the center. Both Giselle and Brian are coaches and have been coaches for a long time with Silicon Valley Change. Giselle supports leaders and teams to maximize their purpose and potential. She does this via executive coaching, leadership trainings, and as a professor on organizational health. Brian Branagan. Brian also has been a coach with us for a long time. He's a communication and leadership coach who shows leaders and members of virtual teams how they can increase team engagement and reduce their cost of coordination. We're really, really glad to be here with you today. Hi, Giselle. Hi, Brian.
Hey, guys.
Hi.
First question for everybody who is coming on board and here with us today. If there is one thing that people take away at the end of today's session, what would you most like it to be? Let's start with Giselle.
It's simply that we need to be intentional about curating our network, and that network needs to be diverse but select. It doesn't actually need to be so big, but it does need to be diverse.
So we need to be intentional, and our network has to be diverse, even if it's not huge.
Exactly.
Super. Brian, what's the one thing you want people to take away?
Well, the one thing I want people to know is that their support network already exists around them. It's just that they have to become, as Giselle said, intentional. So paying attention to how you're already connected to people and how you share and cultivate each other's strengths.
I am sensing between the lines a positive psychology approach in what you're saying. So you already have a network. You already, what is already working really well in what you're doing. Okay. And with those two, we invite all of you to come in, ask Giselle and Brian questions, and we're going to get right into it. This may feel like I'm starting from a negative point of view, but I also want to normalize what I'm hearing from clients, what I'm hearing from friends, what I'm feeling, what people are feeling. So I'll actually read off this question. These COVID-19 times have disrupted so many things for so many people. Is it okay to feel lonely? Is it okay to feel overwhelmed? Is it okay to feel like you may not even want to reach out to people? What do you two think? Either one, please.
Well, it's certainly okay to feel your feelings. And these are disruptive because a lot of how we connect with each other has been disrupted. We can't go into the workplace. And oftentimes we're, at least in the United States now, we're still being asked to limit our interactions with people. So that can be discomforting, jarring. And so noticing that, allowing it, is a good place to start.
Yeah, I agree. Our sudden status as remote workers, parenting at home can lead a lot of people to kind of question this sense of the notion of belonging, right? At work, kind of within a school or even a community group. And so I feel as though it's completely normal. I definitely just some days want to kind of just be by myself. But at the same time, I think once we're out of that funk or that state, or we feel an inclination to reach out, that we should, that personal support really matters. We know from a positive psychology perspective that other people really matter for our well-being and ultimately our resilience as well. So although every feeling is appropriate, there are friends that will be with you with those tough feelings, even colleagues as well. So when you're ready, I still recommend to reach out.
So you're both saying, yes, you will have these feelings, and we're all having these feelings. And at some point you will feel that feeling of wanting to reach out and act on it. Go for it. What does a support network look like for each of you? Let's go in the other order this time. Let's start with Giselle.
So my actual support network, or what I suggest that folks do?
Both.
They're actually the same, so that's a good thing. So I actually follow a lot of the research from Rob Cross on this front when I coach executives or create mentoring programs or think about my own support. And that is that the happiest people in their careers who are also enjoying the ride focus not only on connections for performance, but also for well-being. And so during these times, there are three groups that I myself am really focusing on and I'm finding are helping out others. So one is kind of the very traditional group you go to for information and influence, right? Within the workplace, these are kind of your sponsors, the people you go to for new ideas, maybe new clients, cross-functional relationships, cross geos, right? So for me, for example, I've actually reached out to complementary businesses for coffee chats, kind of saying, hey, we play in the same space. I have some time on my calendar. Would you like to get to know one another? And so I've done that with several organizations across Spain, actually. I also am part of the Professionals Women Network, which is a global women's network, and we do events together. So that's one category. The other two, which I'll briefly share, is your developmental group, right? The people you're going to go to help stretch and develop you. These are things also like professional associations, but mentors, masterminds, community of practice. I've actually been in both of those with both of you. So as FVC coaches,
Mhm.
we have a community of practice. Brian and I actually first met about a decade ago in a mastermind group for professionals. I'm currently in a mastermind group for female entrepreneurs, and we meet every 2 weeks. And then the third group is that kind of personal support and balance. The colleagues that will help you get back on track when you're having a rough day, friends you can just be yourself around, even maybe someone that reminds you of your purpose at work, like a good customer that you might have a relationship with. And that balance is something that promotes your interests outside of work. So for a lot of people, it could be a physically distant walking group right now, or maybe you find a neighborhood group through Nextdoor. Or for me, it's been connecting with old friends in California. We have a weekly call on the calendar. It doesn't always happen, but I know that I can reach out to them for some support at the end of the week when it's been tough. So those are the three groups that I've been focusing on and that I recommend people really get intentional about right now.
And Giselle, how did you figure out these three groups? Was it trial and error? Were you deliberate about it? How did this come out? This professional, developmental, and personal support.
I mean, these are 3 of 6 categories that I pay attention to from research on network development. And so for me, these are the ones that have made sense for the past 6 months of my life, but I've really doubled down on over the last 3 months. So they're kind of research tested, but Giselle approved.
That should be your motto on your website. Research tested, but Giselle approved.
I'm not sure I'll ever use that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Brian, what do you think about what does a support network look like to you?
Well, they're pretty much in the same three categories that Giselle said. There's uh, the support group. I mean, these are people that have known you, that you've worked with. I go through regularly my LinkedIn account and just see who are people I've worked with in the past. I'm curious about, what are they up to? I've been using these times to reach out to them to just say, hey, just want to let you know how important you were in my career at that point in my life. And these were lessons I learned and I connected. So just people that have supported me along the way. And then there's I call the network of help, much like the professional associations that Giselle talked about. There's also uh, you know, business network referrals. But these are people where uh, you reach out to, that let them know here's support that you can offer, and that you're also open to support requests that they have of you. And then, but the most important one I think is as well as the community of practice. And I really look at the work of Etienne Wegner. WENGER. And a lot of my support and network of help has come through developing communities of practice and staying engaged with them. These are people who know what my professional level is and what I'm about, the things I'm trying to make happen in the world, and I know what they're about, and we're often finding opportunities to engage in joint practices, making joint offers. So those networks of support, networks of help, and community of practice.
How you two develop these similar 3 categories without coordinating with each other, I don't know, but you're on the same page.
Well, I would say by being observers of them and practice.
Approving them on your own.
Yeah.
Why is the support network important now? I think that's a reaction right there by Giselle. Like,
yeah. Well, I think we've just taken things for granted for too long, and this is a big disruption. We already had a sense that networks of support would just always be there, through work, through life, and now with these disruptions, it's like the sense of these things have to be taken care of. They have to be nurtured. And more importantly, they need to be made resilient, for the connection. So I think that how we emerge from these COVID-19 times is going to be really dependent on designing, maintaining, cultivating our connections, our relationships with other people.
Yeah. For me personally, they've always been a necessity. Sonia and I graduated in a Pioneer Master's class. We kind of had to develop our own network and our own community. I'm a solopreneur living in Spain, working with mostly US-based companies, right? So that's also a necessity from a professional front. And I think what I've observed, it goes back to that point around kind of people rethinking their sense of belonging, right? We know that we've got a sense of belonging to this organization, but we can't take it for granted that we're going to sit down with our colleagues for lunch or have, a coffee break. And so how can we be more intentional about these things? And I think that that's the beautifully creative opportunity that we have, is to think about who are the people that I'd like to be in touch with, or what are the relationships I'd like to be creating and cultivating. And what I've heard from people is that now more than ever, kind of complete strangers, or perhaps that person in your organization that you felt was inaccessible, are open for chats now. When people are reaching out, they're usually getting a yes. And so I think it's a great opportunity to rethink those desired connections, those desired groups that you'd like to have, and to be creative. So for example, I have a friend that was feeling really saddened by what was going on in her hometown of Portland, actually. And she connected with some people through a Facebook group to create an anti-racist book group, right? That was meaningful to her. And she connected with some strangers to do a sort of book club to create a community of learning and reflection. So that would never really have happened unless, the current events were happening. And so that was, I think, a real opportunity.
Yeah, the 3 of us were talking briefly about just this dynamic that we have the chance to reach out and invite people into our lives that we may not have before, and make connections between people that we may not have before. And we talked a little bit about mastermind groups and sort of even making our own, because sometimes you think about mastermind groups as these deep philosophical, their own circles, and what are they doing there, and what is it? But it really can just be a group of people that meet together. The 3 of us talked about this recently. So let's say it's me or somebody who is here with us today, listening and watching. How can I start a support network?
Support for what?
Well, I would, yeah, that's the key question. What's the
So
objective?
I think what you're saying for is think about those categories. Do I want something that's professional? Do I want something that's developmental? Do I want something that's my personal support? I'm just craving speaking to friends. And then once okay, let's say developmental. I want to move forward in my career. And I say that because a lot of the questions that we get here are about, I want to move forward in my career. I want to get promoted. What should I do?
So I'll speak from experience for the most recent mastermind group I've been a part of. I think that it's a good idea to start with the strength of weak ties. So I'm talking about a group that's outside of any sort of work environment. I knew one person who put out a call within a group, a professional association for people that might be interested in a sort of mastermind group with a few criteria. This is how often we'd like to meet. We're looking to, have diversity of our membership. We're looking to play in certain areas, but all be coaches. And one person helped to do the vetting. And so we did kind of a pilot. So the first few mastermind sessions we had a light agenda. We took turns facilitating. And then after the first few calls, we kind of recapped, gave feedback on how it was going. And we did the same thing at the 30-day and the 60-day mark. So that's how we got started. One person did drop out. It wasn't right for them. We decided to keep the group as it was, and in the future we'll kind of open it up to another member or two. So we started with a group of 6. In terms of a professional mastermind group, I think 6 is 6 or smaller. Between 4 and 6 is a good number in my opinion.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah, so I agree. And I also, just to add to that, nothing is more powerful than a great question. So saying, this is what I'm interested in exploring. Here's what I know about it. And inviting people to join you in the exploration. So and just to add to what Giselle was saying is to put some time boundary on it. Like this is going to be a 2-month exploration. We're going to be meeting weekly. Here's what the structure of the call will be like. And here's the result that we're looking for, and that that would also be of value to others. My own clients or their clients. A great example of that is like the Forbes Coaches Council questions. If you've ever seen those online, you see them sometimes posted on LinkedIn. It's a great question. They ask some coaches how they would respond to it, and then those all become rolled up and then made available to others. So that's one way I would start. Just a great question, kind of a rallying cry, and basically who would it serve?
Yeah.
It helps if you pepper the group with 1 or 2 folks that might have done something like that before or might have facilitation skills, but it's also not a must, right? And kind of the format can evolve. You can do a hot seat where someone kind of presents their issue and others react to it or add to it or give feedback. You can do themes where you might have a question, how do I really do this? And it can be a question that others kind of want to answer for themselves as well. We're even trying in my group working in communities, so kind of like a virtual co-working next week, where we're just going to do focused time together. And it seems a little weird to me, but I'm totally game because it's about experimenting. We're going to start with a stretch and some breathing, and then we're going to do focused time for 45 minutes. And then after that, kind of share how it went. And that's just a new experiment, a way of working. And I think it's important to be open and playful in terms of the structure and how these meetings evolve. There's no prescription for how to run a mastermind.
I'm so glad you brought that up because I think about that a lot. What should the format be? Like one other detail in addition to the 3 or 4 you've mentioned is I love when people do a feel, kind of a touch base at the beginning and at the end of the sessions, because there might be someone who's just a little quieter, which is normal. But if you get what their thoughts at the beginning or at the end, they're already in the discussion. So the hot seat, having a question, but having different ways of approaching the question. It's just nice to know that there are different ways to do it.
Mm.
As we get to our last formal question, I'm going to put up on the screen that people please type in your takeaways so far so that we can comment on them. Any questions you have for Giselle or Brian, type them in. And certainly, what are you taking away? How are you going to step out and start your new support network in whatever group you may want to start it in? So what are your takeaways? And my very specific question, after that, I'll also invite you to give remaining comments. My last question is, what practically has worked, have you found to be effective? Something that's an hour every week, to a half hour every two. I don't know what Giselle mentioned about 4 to 6 people is a good size. What are practically, if someone's thinking about this, what should they think about in terms of structure? Brian, how about you?
Well, so it's good to have a rhythm of conversation as a group. I would also say that if you're going to have a group of 6 or more, to also have a pair so that you could have a conversation between the meetings. And that keeps, sometimes things can be expressed in a conversation with another person that's a little difficult to mention in a larger group. So having an offline conversation with another member of the mastermind is a good way to do that.
Yeah, for me, what's worked really well is we have six women, and we meet. We kind of structure it like a coaching relationship. So you meet a little bit more frequently at first to build the relationship and the momentum. So we started by meeting weekly for 90 minutes. And we would always start with an agenda. One of us facilitates, so we have an idea of how to run the time. So if you have to cut someone off, we understand why. And so we divvy up the time equitably. And then we'll always set between the sessions accountability. So for example, with the group of 6, for the first 6 weeks approximately, 3 of us would set an accountability goal, and then we would be in the hot seat. So each of us would have about 20 minutes in the hot seat, and we would flip flop every few weeks. So you had some time for prep. If you needed to ask for feedback from the members in the meantime, we have a shared Google Doc to do that. But really, if it's a mastermind for development and growth, you want to have accountability between sessions. Otherwise, you're just kind of having good conversations. So that's really important. And then, of course, to get feedback, to as you mentioned, Sanya, to get a pulse check on where things are going. The amazing thing about a mastermind group, too, that I've just realized now that I've been in one for 3 months, is that we've had the opportunity to kind of take stock of our progress with one another, to be honest, to share and receive some honest feedback where we've seen each other grow. And then we just did planning towards the end of the year. So we did a reflection exercise, sharing kind of wins for the first half of the year, and then planning for the second half of the year. So we're all aware of each other's kind of goals in these times and accountabilities to set the big picture for our work moving forward. So that's actually that can be a nice thing to do at a quarterly basis, to take stock of people's kind of bigger goals.
Yeah. And it really kind of could be either that it's a book club where you're really not interacting with people other than when you meet in that session, or it could be like you're saying, hey, there's homework in between. You're accountable to someone, or check in, do some things between one another. That both options sound great for what somebody's looking for. It's really nice to have both. Mm-hmm. Giselle and Brian, I would like to open it up for your ending thoughts. Here are my takeaways. My takeaways are start anything. Just start. If you're craving, and maybe in these categories, I'll put them up again, but if you're craving in these categories, or similarly called these categories, if you're craving a connection there, go ahead and start one. Just do it. Be that person that is starting something in these categories, and that there's a wide range of how you can do it. Timing, who to invite, how to do it, whether they're people you know or people you don't know, but that you can also experiment, just like you said, Giselle, that you tested a few things and you're seeing what the right cadence. So that's so far just my summary, but please mention anything I've left out that's important, or other things that you would want to add to this idea of reaching out and creating our own support network of masterminds. Giselle, what are some of your ending comments?
I think it's helpful for me to kind of look back, and I've always recognized that where I am, or whatever success I've had, is a product of the relationships I've formed in the past. that have kind of come back to me at the right time. And so for me, not only do I have that in mind, but it also just makes it easier to remind myself to reach out. You really never know how a relationship is going to evolve, what you can give to it in your lifetime, or what they'll give to you. So reach out, and then remember the give and take from our friend Adam Grant, right?
Yeah.
Check in with yourself to make sure that you're giving to the relationship as much as they're giving to you. And yeah, that's it. Don't overcomplicate it. And when you do reach out, just be clear about your intentions, about what it is that you're interested in learning or how you're interested in growing. I reach out to book authors all the time. When I finish a book, I'll reach out, I'll let them know what I liked. I might ask some questions, and it's been a wonderful way to develop that learning network that I have. So be intentional with others. Don't just say, "Hey, I'd like to connect."
Thank you so much. Thank you. Brian.
And so what I would add is that first, remember that we're already always connected, and then observe how we're connected. And then the next is in terms of intentionality that Giselle mentioned. It's the difference between foraging and cultivating. And I think that we've been really almost too used to having our connections served up to us at work or through social media, and that's kind of foraging. But you can only forage when there's fruit there, So you can also cultivate, where you're actually growing the connections and bringing, feeding the soil, and basically growing your connections and the value that you're sharing with other people.
That's very visual. I like that. I love analogies in general, but I like that idea of instead of going for what's out there, like now that you have time to step back and just consider what you'd really like, cultivate.
Mm-hmm.
It's time to cultivate our gardens of support networks.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Giselle. Thank you, Brian. Thank you so, so much. Delightful to have you here. We're so glad today was about building your support network. Thank you.
Good to see you. See you in our next community of practice call.
Exactly. See you at our next community of practice.
Yeah. Thank you.